Okay, we are live. Sorry about that. Should be a few extra clicks this time. Good evening and welcome. My name is Carlin Sullivan. I'm the director of the TeamPact Alumni Network, and we are thrilled that you are here for our next episode of Equip. Super excited to be talking to a dynamite young man named Grant Johnson, and he is going to share with us some great tips on being organized and how to take really large projects in your life and kind of break them down for students. And as I was thinking about it, I think this is going to apply to us adults as well. So the purpose of Equip is to bring you monthly micro trainings in the areas of stewardship, discipleship, life organizational skills, career, and college development. So we are thrilled you're here. If you are here watching, then you're obviously part of the network. Feel free to invite your TeamPact friends of the ministry, so that they might also be a benefit of the resources we have to offer. We strongly desire to create a network of people all across the nation to lend a hand out to those behind us and to those in front of us. So without further ado, Grant, welcome. We're so glad you're here.
Oh my goodness. Thanks for having me. This is going to be so much fun.
Yeah, it is. So tell us just a little bit about your TeamPact story, how you got involved with the ministry and where life has you now.
Sure. So here's how I remember it. If you ask my parents, it might be different. I remember my parents came to me and they said, so you know that government camp that your two older brothers went to? And I'm like, yeah, why? And they go, well, you're going to go. And I said, no. And they said, well, actually, we already signed up and paid for it, so you're gonna have so much fun. I say, okay. So I start doing errands, chores, anything I can do to make that money back so I can pay them back. So I make the money, I bring it to them, and I say, all right, I'm not going. And they say, thank you so much for the donation. Have so much fun at camp. So day one, I wanted nothing to do with it. I was basically determined to hate this camp. And day two, like a lot of us here, I was committed. I was all in TeamPact, and looking back, I think more than anything, it was one of the first times I'd come across people relatively my age who were passionate about other people, not just themselves, not just their own pursuits, but cared about what TeamPact was doing. And it was awesome. So fast forward a little bit, started staffing, travel staffed for a bit, eventually interned in 2019. And I'm so grateful for the experience. I can't tell you how many terrifying experiences all of us just get to do. And you all know this, like, out of your comfort zone. They say that is like this and a thing, but it's true. And it happens every single day. And without that, I think I'd be a hugely different person.
Right. So I think TeamPact gave you a lifetime parting gift. And what was that?
Oh my goodness. Krista Kaufman. So I'm now married to Krista. We live in Stillwater, Oklahoma. And, you know, when we sent out this like mark your calendars for this event, I had written this thing like, and my phenomenal wife, Krista, and someone who shall remain nameless, we'll call him Jordan Armga, DM'd me. And he said, you know, you said this average human and this phenomenal wife, Kristen. I'm like, yeah, thanks for pointing it out, but I couldn't have put it better myself. And I'm so thankful to have met her through this. So do TeamPact, get a wife, it's worth it.
That's true. And Jordan met his wife through TeamPact as well. So
exactly.
That's awesome. That's great. So you are working on, or have developed, I should say, this really incredible program called Getting Stuff Done. First of all, I love the title. I think it's so simple. You didn't try to be fancy with it. You just called it what it was, Getting Stuff Done. Tell us a little bit about how this even came to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So about a year ago, I started a role as a product manager at the Institute for Leadership, Excellence, and Development. And I'm working with a project management professor who's been teaching people how to lead and deliver for over 20 years. And I thought that was really cool. And I started getting into project management just a little bit, and I was fascinated. And then I started to realize that, you know, this isn't just a career skill, this is a life skill. It's something that everybody needs. There's a quote I love from Dr. Harvey Mailer. He's a project manager. And he said, life is one big project. The trick is in managing it. And I think that's so true. It doesn't matter who you are, you're always going to have deadlines to hit and outcomes to deliver. So over the past year, I've been making a course that basically answers, how do you do that really well? And I think it's going to help a lot of students, hopefully.
Is it geared mainly towards students coming out of high school?
Yes, primarily high school students, gap year students, definitely college students, but mostly focused on pre-workforce.
So I feel like that is so necessary, particularly in this time and age. I mean, my husband and I have 4 children, and just looking where our oldest, who's almost 27, to our youngest, who's 19, just in that age span, on how much pressure there is now, even just on our rising sophomore and college student, on getting the grades, the grades to the classes to the college in order to get the big job, and that's not always everyone's path. Are you finding, because God calls many people not to go to a college, or go to a trade school, or to become an entrepreneur like you, or to start developing content? There's some really successful people out there who are doing incredible things without a college degree. So are you finding that getting stuff done would help anybody, whether they went to college or they did not?
Oh my goodness, yes. And I think you're right about the pressure. I mean, we're expected to know 5 years in advance where we see ourselves. I saw this thing on social media today. It was basically like, can we all agree that, 2015, when you were asked, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Nobody got that answer right. And if the pandemic's taught us anything, it's that. So yet we still have this pressure to kind of be like, all right, this is my trajectory. This is where I'm headed. And we have comfort in this, even though we shouldn't. And it's fascinating to me because also, like, I think about my own pursuit here. And, I did a kind of a dual thing. I did online school while doing kind of these entrepreneur kind of endeavors. And everybody has a different path, but I think, oh yeah. I was just going to say, I think like looking back is one of the most helpful things, because when we look forward, we think, oh, we have to have this plan. But I think it's really helpful to be like, what are the experiences that I've already had? And be like, okay, Team Pact's there. I played music. I did random sports. I did all these different things. The time was just chaos, right? I had no reason for actually choosing to do any of those things. I just wanted to, and I stepped into it. And as a result of that, I gained all these skills that at the time I didn't realize it, but we're going to transition into whatever I find myself into next. And like, I'm young. That's going to be true of the next thing I do and the next thing. And I think that's a really hopeful and helpful message for people who are like, I don't know, maybe college, maybe this job next, maybe that. And I think that's a really healthy place to be.
One of the greatest piece of advice my dad ever gave me was, I remember being like 25, 26, going, I don't know what I want to do. And then, at the time I was married, and, so I had that done, but not as far as a career. And I remember him because when you're about 30, 35 is when you kind of find your lane. And I thought, that was super interesting. So it's funny to me how we look at, and I do the same thing. I look at 17, 18-year-olds going, so what do you want to do? What are you going to major in? I don't know, whatever, who knows at 17 what they want to do.
That's the scariest question in the world, right?
Exactly. So I need to stop asking that question. So tell me about the program. Exactly. Like, give me a little bit of nuts and bolts, and how does it work to take a big and kind of break down into bite-sized pieces?
Sure. So the course is called Getting Stuff Done, Project Management for Students, which, as we just talked about, it's not just a career skill, it's a life skill. And it's really as simple as, how do we take something and actually make it happen, and not just talk about getting stuff done, but learn to become someone who delivers. So the course is a 4-week program. It's divided up using what I call a 4-question framework, fun marketing thing. And the questions are why, who, what, and how. So in the first week, we talk about why. And when you're doing any project, as well as in life, you want to identify, why am I doing this? What is the reason behind it? Because until we know the purpose of something, we don't really know what to do with it. So we like to identify the why, and then the project management side of that is initiating. A lot of it is focusing on the business need. Okay, what is this doing for our business? Because so we can kind of think through that lens, we're not going to know which decisions are the best to make. And then in the second week, we talk all about who. And project management wise, we're talking about the people side of projects. We talk about personality development, understanding how we work well with others, conflict, communication, these different very people side, because you can have all the technical proficiency in the world and still get nothing done if you don't know how to work well with other people. And the other question there would be, who do I need to be in order to accomplish that why that we talked about in week 1? So like for me, example, Chris and I's wedding was not necessarily the norm, but one of my favorite things that where we deviated from tradition was in our wedding vows. And it started with, we both looked at each other and we said, I vow to have fun with you and point you to Jesus. That was our why. And we established that about 8 months before through conversations with each other and with her dad. And I'm so thankful for that, because not only did it work for our relationship and does it continue to be this kind of lens through which we look at things, but just for myself, it's been this thing of like, why am I getting out of bed today? That's why. And then you have to break down, okay, who do I need to be in order to be that kind of person? So at our wedding, if you were there, you would also hear us say, we want to be irrationally generous. We want to be health oriented. We want to be moment makers, and we want to be curiosity driven, because those are the elements of what makes up the kind of person who can accomplish that why. So it's also about the personal life. So in week 3, we ask what. So we have the why, we have the who. So what do we actually do to accomplish the why? And that's where we break it down. In project management terms, that would be called a work breakdown structure. So we teach you kind of some technical sides of taking this, almost imagine an org chart, break it down into these individual facets. And that's where you can get into what we talk about with week 4. How do we actually do this? Scheduling, how do we handle conflict that arises? How do we do risk analysis? These different parts of, if you need to know this, if you're going to manage a project professionally, but it totally applies to daily life as well.
How much is the program? What does it cost?
Yeah, the program costs $299. However, I'm not sure if you have the affiliate link there, but we did want to do a link through there where you can save $50 just by putting in the promo code TEAMPACT. And then also, there's an affiliate link where $50 of your donation is going to go towards TeamPact.
Wow.
Just as a donation to TeamPact. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I will put that in the comments after we're finished and posted for sure if people are interested. So how long does it take to get through each module, like each week? Is it 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hours? What is the time frame?
It's a few hours of content. I would guess roughly 3 hours of content a week. And then there's 1 to 2 assignments every week that can very much vary, anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours.
Wouldn't this apply? It sounds to me, and maybe I'm wrong in not understanding. And by the way, I did preview for the listeners. I did preview his first session, and it is hysterical. Just the opening. So this is not some stiff neck guy in front of a whiteboard. I mean, this is.
We want to make it fun.
Oh my gosh, I was laughing like he's really doing this. This is hysterical. I love this. It's very, very well done and very professionally produced. But could someone in the business world apply this to themselves as well? I mean, it seems like I'm thinking like just even in my work, like just taking a project and breaking it down and understanding why I'm doing like a big project. Would that be helpful? Or do you think it's mainly just for students?
Oh my goodness. I think it definitely is helpful.
Okay.
And while it's geared towards students, these are, Andy's content. It's 20 years of consulting and coaching project management. And what I got to do for the last year is distill that and say, which of this most applies to students? But I don't think there's a person who doesn't need to get stuff done.
Exactly. What are you hearing from some of the students that you're starting to work with? What is the biggest pressure that you're hearing from them that is being placed on either self-imposed or imposed by society?
Sure. Definitely the whole, what do I do with my life? That's a huge one. There's the whole, how do I manage stress of, there's 9 different things going on. And I think there's such a fast progression from elementary school, middle school, high school. There's this transition point where all of a sudden it's not 5 things anymore that I'm managing, it's 25 things. And it's not necessarily sequential how we get to that point. So I hear a lot of people who, it's the first time they're dealing with real legitimate stress. There's this thing called the duck. I want to say it's the duck effect. And basically, if you picture a duck when it's swimming, you see it's like super calm, serene on top, but then underneath to move, it's just like going like crazy just to try to move it all. And I think a lot of us have that duck thing going on where we're like, on the surface, I got this, definitely students, and we need to project that to the world. And then we're just like frantically trying to keep up with demands. And I think that's where the course really adds value is how do you do that?
Can you give a testimony of someone who's told you like one of their aha moments, like, wow, you really helped me capture this part of chaos in my life and bring order to it, or this is how it impacted me in a different area of their lives?
So today is actually launch day. We've had it's been a relatively small number of students who have taken it so far. Just, they've given us feedback and reviews so far. But what we've heard so far, several business students who wanted to go into that world are saying, I feel so much more ready, not just for college, but I feel like I could step into an MBA program and just talk, because it just kind of gets you thinking more than anything. I think it gets you thinking through lenses that are helpful to be able to solve any kind of problems and order your life in a way that you get stuff done faster with less stress.
Mhm. When we were talking earlier today, you were telling me the story of how this even became an idea of yours. Working with Andy, you and Krista were going to do a podcast series, I believe. Tell me a little bit about that. That was so interesting how this idea even came to fruition.
Sure. So the podcast series, while we were dating, it was the weirdest thing ever. Krista and I both kind of had this independent of each other. We never talked about it. Both had that whole, I have no freaking idea what I want to do. And, like both my brothers growing up, I feel like they came out of the womb knowing what they would do, like 5-step plan. This is what I'm doing. This is where I'm headed. I won't speak for them. I believe around age 13, though, my oldest brother, his name is Andrew. Probably around age 13, he knew I'm going to be a mechanical engineer. And then before he ever went to college to become that mechanical engineer, he's like, after that, I'm going to go to law school and become a patent lawyer. And he's a mechanical engineer and he's about to finish law school. And then my second brother, yeah, he did it. And then my second brother, Parker, had a baseball injury when he was about 13 and went to a physical therapist who helped him heal up. And he loved the experience there. He started meeting people. He was like, I want to do this. Ever since, he's been on that trajectory. He's about to finish up physical therapy school. And then I'm sitting here and Krista's sitting here. We're like, what are we supposed to do? And I think it's a really big encouragement for that. There's a book I love by an author named David Epstein. And he has a quote that basically says, I'm paraphrasing here, but if we treated careers more like we treated dating, nobody would settle down so quickly. Because when we're trying to make these long-term decisions, sometimes they work. Shout out to my brothers for letting them work. But when we try to make these long-term absolute plans where there isn't much movement, it's trying to make a decision for somebody who doesn't even exist yet.
Mm-hmm. Did you get much pushback from not taking the traditional route of education, meaning high school straight into a 4-year university on a campus?
Initially, I think, I was a little hesitant to tell everyone at first because it's like, oh, not weird. And then like very quickly into it, COVID hit and I was doing the online thing while working. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is great. Cause I was at a university that was already set up for this. I'm like, okay.
You're normal now.
Yeah, I'm normal now.
Yeah. Traditional, I should say. Lots of people have the dream to become an entrepreneur, kind of like what you're doing, to kind of take a different path, follow their passions, follow their giftings. What advice would you have for that student who has an idea, but is so afraid to either speak it or to go after? What advice would you have, and what would be the first steps you would have them take?
Sure. Number one is do something, sample something, try something, because there's that Dale Carnegie quote, inaction breeds doubt and fear. Action brings confidence and courage. And I've experienced that so much because, sitting down doing this, having already done a course in the last year and created all this content, that would have felt like an absolute mountain a year and a half ago, even.
Right.
And it started by just doing something. Number two is there's going to be a million distractions around you. So get razor sharp clarity about those questions. Why am I doing this? Who do I need to be to do it? And then what are those elements? And break it down as much as you possibly can till you're not really thinking about the next 50 steps.
Right.
You are at one point, but you're getting low level enough to where you're like, okay, this step right